Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Women in STEM panel. I have with me three USC Viterbi graduates, and we're just going to kind of go over some questions, and they have like a lot of great insightful advice to give us all. So if everyone just wants to go around and like introduce themselves, I think that'd be great.
Awesome. I can go first. My name is Valeria. I graduated last spring from Viterbi as an industrial and systems engineering major. Um, I currently work I currently work at the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers as a program specialist, and then I am an incoming Industry X analyst at Accenture.
Hello, my name is Maria. I graduated in last spring studying industrial systems engineering with a minor in French. I'm currently living in New York and I'm working as a developer advocate for a cloud computing startup.
My name's Catherine. I graduated from SC 2022, and I graduated from Viterbi, where I majored in computer science and business administration. I'm currently based in Austin, Texas, where I'm a software engineer for Meta, which is formerly known as Facebook, for anyone confused.
That's a fun transition. Um, so yeah, I guess so we all graduated from USC. I guess like the first question really is just like how did your post-grad journey really like shape your perspective on your career path?
Yeah, I guess for me, my post-grad journey was a bit rough. So I feel like everyone always talks about what to expect going into college from high school. So I felt somewhat adequate going from high school to college. I feel like rarely anyone talks about what it's like graduating from college and going straight into your first corporate job, let alone something in tech, right? So it was definitely very rough, especially, coming from USC, you're in LA. I was born and raised in LA, and so I'm moving to a totally new city, totally new state, trying to really understand what's going on with my life. Um, but yeah, I feel like because of that, and I've always felt like at SC I had a very strong support system, or at least I had a lot of friends. That's kind of what I wanted out of Austin, where it's my post grad destination. So I really made it kind of a goal to really talk to other people, network with other people, but also kind of just putting myself out there with my job just because, I'm by myself. There's really nothing for me to lose. So if there were any projects, I volunteered myself for it, or if there's anything to learn or implementing anything new, I always try to volunteer and put myself forward for that just because, you know, the first couple years straight out of college, that's really when you soak up the most information. And it's just easier to pick up. So really, you're starting with a skill set that's pretty much very rudimentary because that's kind of what you're really equipped with in college, just basic programming skills, how to work in groups, how to, plan like a specific, app, but it's like obviously when you're working, or at least in my job, is very different. Like I'm managing 5 different products. You're working with other people, like not only engineers on your team, but engineers from your other teams and people that aren't even engineers as well. So you're just working with a variety of people, and you're really just trying to learn as much as you can. Because obviously, the more you know, um, the more projects you can pick up, and it just like looks better in terms of kind of performance within the company, but also kind of just building your own skill set for the future. So kind of long-winded, but yeah.
I think for me, my paths have been also like pretty different, or it's like I really resonated with Catherine was saying of like everyone prepares you for like what happens after you graduate high school, but then like after you graduate college, it's just like everyone's just like thrown to the wolves because I think for me and I think anyone who the recent like college graduate might attest to this or about to graduate, but it is a pretty tricky time to be graduating in terms of like finding a job. And I got fortunate enough that I did find a really good job. My start date got deferred to like later in like next year, so like 2024. So then I was like kind of in this position where it's like I have a really, really good job that I'm really looking forward to, but then I have this huge gap of time of like what do I do with my life, right? And then that can kind of send you into a like a whirlwind of like how do I keep growing and like how do I do something that one can give me an income, the person that needs an income, but also that I can grow professionally and like keep developing skills that I'm gonna use. Um, and I think that's where it's at least for me, like my network really kicked in because I had volunteered at the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I was a member for all of college. And right around the time that I was finding out that my job for really get pushed back, I also was finding out that they were looking to hire some people on one of their teams that I had like volunteered at, which kind of like those stars lined up perfectly for me. But then I got to pursue an opportunity that was completely different from like my career path, where like now I'm working at a nonprofit, and I think that's to say that like because things didn't go as I was expecting it to, and I was not forced to, but I was in a position where I had to try something different. It really expanded my options of like, oh, like I don't necessarily always like if I want to do like a STEM job, it doesn't necessarily always have to be like this like straight linear path. There's so many different avenues to pursue STEM. Um, and I think that's been really eye-opening for me as someone who had just like a very linear like, well, like I'm gonna do graduate, go to consulting, blah 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 blah. So that's been a change from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely adding on to what Valeria said. I had a very unusual path post grad. So contrary, I feel like my post grad was easier because I went through that change while I was still in school. So I took a semester off my spring of junior year and started working corporate. And then my challenge was going back to school full time and working full time. So managing like the best of both worlds. So I would say like the things I learned the most were like the difference between appearances and reality. So there's lots of people with fancy titles who have no idea what they're doing. And just because you have a lower title doesn't mean you're lower worth. So appearances versus reality. So especially in tech, yes, there's disadvantages by not having parents who work at Apple or having a slower start or not going to a computer science program. But the good thing is that there's so many resources out there, and just kind of like Kath is saying, putting yourself out there. So um taking a risk and saying, okay, let me do this project I've never heard of. So for example, when I started college, I wanted to be a quantitative software engineer, but then my break, I started working in developer advocacy, which is developer education, which I never thought I was going to do. It came from me not getting a Google internship and taking a internship teaching computer science to lower income students in elementary school, and that turned into developer education, which I found out that I'm passionate about. So appearances versus reality. So like, okay, you may feel like you're on this path, or you may feel like this is not the right fit for you, but the time in your life is to try it out. And finding out that you don't like something is a success. It's not a failure. That's a success. Like, I know in my heart that I don't like marketing and sales, and the time I spent working in that time is a success. So those are the main things.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And that's an interesting thing that you kind of already were doing corporate work during college. And so yeah, my next question was kind of how did you like encounter transitioning from academia to the professional world? And Maria, if you want to go first, and just because you were already kind of touching on that, maybe dive a little deeper on like kind of day to day what it looks like and how you managed working full time while being a full time student.
Yeah, so I definitely had some crazy days, for sure. So I worked at a startup. I've worked at two startups since I started working. So at the time, my manager had had long COVID, so I took on all of her responsibilities. So I would go to my morning meetings, then I would have a meeting with planning this like large tech conference. Then I would have my GE class, which that was like the craziest like brain change. I went from a meeting of like planning like $1 million budget to talking about reading a book for a subject I didn't really care about. So I think the biggest transition is like understanding, like I said before, that nobody knows anything. Like, I mean, people know stuff, but like everybody's a learner, like is in the position of being a learner. It's just that some people are more advanced along that journey. So I didn't know anything about budgeting, program management, event planning, but you kind of just have to force yourself to like listen and learn in the same way that when you take calculus for the first time, you're going to be awful at it. That's just how it works. So it's the same thing with corporate. You're going to be awful for the first few times. Like I've done at least 30 conferences since I started, and the first one was awful, but you have to do the first one. So like that's the biggest change of like the awful that you get in school is, oh, I got a C or a D or whatever, but the awful you get in corporate is I just had an experience. So it's not that same, it's not permanent the way it is in academia.
Crazy.
I think similar, one of the biggest challenges that I faced is I think when you're in school, always like I saying like a linear path, but it's like you get to the semester, there's a syllabus, you know exactly what's coming, you know exactly when your dates, like your exams are, maybe they'll change by like a week, you know what homework you have, like you have a plan that you just have to, that you kind of go through the motions and you graduate. When you have a project for like work, that there's no like there's like a maybe like a timeline, maybe like this is the date that it's due, but everything in between is just like subject for change, where it's like you might have said like, oh, this is what we're going with and we're gonna do I don't know, let's say part one of this project we're gonna finish by um next week, but then next week comes and they're like, oh, actually we're completely scratching that part one that we did and we're gonna start all over again. And that can happen 2 times because it's like ever changing, like the if you work with like clients or if you work with partners, like their demands change, your team's demands change. And I think learning learning how to adapt and being okay with that change is a skill that like can be overlooked, but it's so important because it's so easy to get frustrated like the third time you're doing like, let's say part like the third time you're working on this and um still not right. It can get really frustrating, but like it's also knowing that like this is not, maybe it's not indicative of your own worth, it's just a learning opportunity for you to keep like working on these skills, working on not only these skills but understanding the needs of your team and like your clients better, so that next time you show up stronger and better, like it was saying, right? Like it's not like a setback, it is a learning opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, for me, transitioning from academia, so like being a student at SC, to working full time as a software engineer at Meta, it was very challenging for sure. Because first of all, whichever company you end up working for, like for example, software engineering, I'm just gonna because it just that's the breadth of my expertise. Um, whatever company you go for, you're gonna have to definitely learn a lot from the jump, right? Starting from the tech stack. Like not every company shares the same exact tech stack, right? And especially from graduating straight from college, you learn very specific languages, right, based off of the curriculum that, the department at the university has curated for its students, right? So off the jump, that's very different, right? You're working with something that's basically very foreign to you, although, albeit, what you learn in college, it provides good basics, like you definitely need those, but it is very different, right? So that's off the jump, there's that. The second, I guess, also for me is, it's really like, for me, it's so, because, at least at SC, they place a lot of emphasis on, these are real world applications that we're focusing on building, right? And this is what you have to do. We work in groups and everything, like in a group setting. And I thought that would be enough, or like that would, give me some type of like pretty good preparation for, when I enter the corporate world. And it's very different, right? So a project in the corporate world is very different because there's so many different moving components. First of all, your business partners that you have to take into consideration, right? In college, your professor just gives you a prompt, like, build this out, and you build exactly to their specifications, right? But with a business partner, it's very different, right? Because it's very fickle, right? You could build something, you could present it to them, right? But they could be like, I hate this. This is nothing what I wanted. And you have to go back to the drawing board, right? And that's just not something that you're prepared for, in classes that we did, in college, right? And another part is really just talking and having to communicate with so many different people. At least in university, or even before entering corporate America, like even as a freelancer, because I did a little bit of that as well. You're very much in your own world, right? You're doing, I have this vision, I'm gonna develop this. This is how I'm gonna build it out. But when you're working in a bigger setting, like you're doing in like a company, you're not in your own world. You have to be able to kind of, obviously when you're working by yourself, yeah, you can do that, but you have to be able to kind of step outside of that and really take into account, what is the big picture here? What are all the different portions that are, part of the project, right? Because it's not just you have to coordinate with so many different people, right? So I think for me that was very tough, right? Because no one in college, I was never prepared to, like, okay, well, if you have a problem with a client, what are you gonna do? Or what are you gonna do what are you gonna do if you have beef with the product manager? Like, no one prepares you for that, right? So it's kind of definitely a learning process, but like as Maria said, the first project is always very tough because you don't know what to expect. You know, you're practically a baby. You don't know what's going on at all, really. So, but afterwards, every subsequent project after that, you get a little better. You're building better bridges, you're building better communication, connections with different partners, right? And you also kind of learn how to streamline your own process, right? So, don't take the first couple months as kind of, this is my all, like, end all. This, I suck at this. I'm never doing this again. I want to quit, right? It's always very tough the first couple of months. You kind of just have to stick through it and really push through. I mean, obviously, if you really hate it, after really putting some time to it, then, obviously you don't want to stay there. But, the first couple of months will always be hard. But that's kind of something that you learn will get easier as you learn more. So.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think we might have to transition to a part 2 now. If you could just go into more detail or share a pivotal moment that like influenced your career decisions after earning your diploma, especially because I know you were a TA, and I feel like compared to maybe someone like Maria, I think you had more of like a linear path. And so if you could just like go more into that. And
yeah, so linear in the sense that once I kind of made up my mind that I wanted to be a software engineer, it was very linear. Leading up to that, it was a mess. So I can kind of go into that, I guess. So, surprise, surprise, I did not want to be a software engineer from the very beginning. I feel like I went into college wanting to be being someone totally different, wanting to do something a very different career, which is I feel like is very common for people that go through college, and don't let that discourage you, right? That, if you have to change your major or change your career path, that's kind of what college is for. It's not something where, you're supposed to have made up your mind and you have to follow through with it from day one, freshman year. right? You're literally 17 or 18 years old. Like no one expects you to kind of have your 10-year plan and stick to it, you know? God forbid I could barely stick to a schedule. So don't be discouraged by that. But going back to it, so I went into college. So actually being CSBA, I did come into USC as a computer science business administration major. I'm just gonna call that CSBA because so long. So I did go into USC, got accepted as a CSBA major, but how I actually ended up being a CSBA major is actually really funny. So I wanted to go in and become an investment banker. I was like, you know what? I watched all these finance movies. I watched Margin Call. This is my calling. I want to be a finance bro. This is what I want to do. So I was gonna just be a business administration major. I was gonna just be a Marshall student. Um, you know, my dad went to USC and went through Marshall, so you know that's kind of what I want to do. And he also influenced me to kind of look into investment banking. Um, so that's what I want to do. But you know, my dad, you know, he's a consultant where he works a lot with tech solutions. So he was like, you know what? Like I could see the future kind of planning out, and tech is going to play a very big role. It already does in our society play a big role, right? So you know, you should think about adding that. So I kind of just added it for, you know, just for fun, you know, like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? CSBA, I can switch right back to business. So I did go into USC as a business administration major, wanting to be an investment banker. So I'm the type of person where like, placebo effect is so strong. Like once I have my mind set up on something, like it's very much everything is how I set my mind to. So I hated all my computer science classes. I literally took the first computer science class. I got a horrible score on my first exam. And I was like, this is it. I'm not doing this. This is how I know that I'm not made for this, you know? So I did everything for investment banking. I joined a very prestigious, you know, investment banking club on campus, right? Did the whole recruiting process, the networking, did the cold calling, you know, but it just so happened that, right, you know, investment banking has a very interesting recruitment schedule where, you know, for your junior internship, you should be looking for that kind of like your, was it like sophomore year, you should start looking to that like right away. And it just so happened that COVID happened. So COVID went down, and I was still doing these cold calls with all these investment bankers, trying to be like, "Hey, I went to USC. Can you give me a couple minutes of your time to kind of just what you do day to day, how it was like going from USC to investment banking?" And I think the most pivotal one was with this call with this girl. She worked at Lazard, which is an elite, which is a boutique investment bank. She worked at Lazard in New York City, and she basically kind of told me like, you know, with COVID, you know, investment banking and finance, and with any finance job, is very dependent on the markets. And at the time with COVID, we were definitely in a recession. It was very hard. People were getting laid off, you know, left and right, and she was very concerned about her job. And she was saying, you know, I saw that on your resume, you're a computer science and business administration major. If I were you, I would stick to kind of going down that computer science route. You're not saying that you can't do investment banking, because I'm sure you can. You definitely, you know, quantitatively, like your mind is there, right? But I think, you know, just from this call, I could tell that you crave stability, right? And you are a very curious individual. I don't think, you know, arranging PowerPoint decks and arranging logos, you know, and being a little gopher for your first 2 years, that's not something that you really would be interested in. So that call was very important to me because it really made me realize, like, yeah, you know, someone who I don't even know, I literally just sat down for a 5-minute call. She was able to pinpoint kind of like my main characteristics as a person, because I'm very curious. I want to be able to have my hands in multiple things at once. And you know, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but I like to think that like I work like that. My brain works like that. Like I need to be working on multiple things at once. I get bored so easily. And I do crave stability in the sense that I don't want to have to worry about my job every 3 months or every year. Jokes on me because the tech market right now. But you know, so since then, I really kind of started like really doubling down on my computer science classes. And I just happened to take this weeder class at SC, which is, you know, CS 104, data which is kind of the real weeder class. And I really enjoyed it because of the professor. And since then, I was like, you know what, I really actually really love what I do. Like when I'm learning my computer science classes. And this girl brought up a very valid point, and I started looking more into what a software engineer does, what it entails. And I would, during office hours when I'd ask for help from TAs for assignments, they've already interned at companies. So I'll try to kind of pick their brain and see what it's like being a software engineer, albeit they were just interns, right? And just hearing that and really being able to like, hear kind of what it was really like day to day, what your responsibilities entail, that's when I settled like, okay, this is definitely what I want to do. So once I settled my mind on that, it was very linear from there in the sense that, I recruited hard for a junior internship, which I did with a company called Atlassian, which is known for like Trello and Jira. And then from there, I recruited again for post-grad opportunities. And I was just lucky enough to be able to land the software engineering position at Meta. So yeah, it was a very quick turnaround. But yeah, that's kind of just how my whole career panned out. But I guess kind of in short, like what you can take away from this is that, what you have your mind set on at the moment, it's okay to change your mind. You shouldn't beat yourself down. Because at first I was like, I spent 2 years trying to be an investment banker. I'm going to throw all this away. Like, this is so stupid to me. And you should never beat yourself down for that because you're always learning and it's okay. We're constantly evolving, right? It's like the moment when you're stagnant and static, that's when you really start to fester because you're just in like this one place. But constantly moving, constantly changing is what we're supposed to be doing as individuals. So it's only, there's no problem with you having to change your career or, what you want to do. So there's no problem with that. And college is just something very exploratory. I just say do like explore as much as you can in college because you can obviously change your kind of your opportunities and like what your job is in your career after college, but it's much harder, navigating from one career to a totally different career. It's very easy to do it within college, right? You just change your major, start taking some certain classes, and you can go about doing it like that. So I just say college is something that you want to just take as a time to really learn about yourself, what you really want to do. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And kind of and just kind of going more into like the work-life balance in general. Maria, like how do you kind of do that right now? Working and stuff, working full time and balance like activities.
I love this question actually. I think work-life balance is so important. So I work in a very male-dominated space. And I was like a tomboy for a lot of my life. And then I started working with like engineering dudes, and I think that like woke up the feminine energy in me. So like, I love like pursuing fashion and everything. So I do a lot of thrifting in my spare time, and then I work remotely, but I do a lot of tech conferences. So then I bring like the outfits I curate to that, so that's part of my balance. I make sure to exercise or like even just like move my body because I've noticed the times when I don't move my body, my brain starts to slow down. So like finding an activity that like forces you to get out of the house and like interact with people, I think is really great. And like I started doing like dance classes and like trying to explore parts of work that allowed me to learn without pursuing perfection, if that makes sense. Like just reading for the sake of reading, exploring fashion for the sake of fashion, exploring exercise and mindfulness for the sake of it. So it's not tied to like your worth. I think that's like a really important thing to do because a lot of people get into the trap of like, I am my work, or I am my salary, or I am my title. So finding things that like enrich your spirit, I think is really important. And then another part of my work-life balance, travel is a huge big like part of my life. Like I'm currently in Santa Barbara visiting my mom. So like flexibility is super, super important. And like I'm not afraid to pack a bag and travel. So finding ways, if that's something you value, to get your work to pay for it. So almost all of my international travel this year has been through work. So finding little ways to get work to pay for it, well, is like my biggest key to learn now. Life hack.
I think to add to this point, I also work fully remote. I love the flexibility that I have to be able to pursue all of these little things that make me feel better about myself, like working out and all that. But I do think something that does get tricky, and I think anyone who either works remote or like has like I've like had full semesters remote can relate to, is that like it's even more important to prioritize yourself and that balance when your work is at home, because it's so easy for them to get mixed up, where it's like if the only thing stopping me from working is just me opening my computer, I can open my computer at 10 p.m. to work, right? And that's not like a healthy work-life balance, because at 10 p.m. I should be getting ready for bed. So I think it's even more on you as a person, and I guess on me, to be able to achieve that balance. And something that does help me do that is like I try to separate my home as much as possible. Where it's like if I can work all day at a coffee shop, I'd rather do that than work an hour like on my couch. And even if it's like I would avoid at all costs trying to take my computer to my bed. It's like, my bedroom is where I sleep, and that's like a sacred place where I just like sleep, and then my closet, and that's it. Um, and just trying to like separate these areas of my life where it's like I don't feel as inclined. Like if I go to a coffee shop and do all my work, I won't feel as inclined when I get home to just open my computer again, unless I have a really like something that I left for home or something. But for the most part, I can make that separation so that I can also enjoy my home space, and then enjoy the things that I want to enjoy without feeling the pressure to always be working, since I always have access to work.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing before to add on to that, which I really like what you said, like limit your access to work, especially since this is geared towards younger people. I'm gonna say this. You have your whole life to work in an office, work, your whole life. There are certain things you can only do at a certain age. Like make time to explore yourself and the world. So there's a certain amount of time where it makes sense for you to hike Mount Everest, or learn how to be a ballerina, or go to Australia for 6 months or whatever. Prioritize those things. That is way more important than having another $500,000 in your bank account when you're 80. So that's my thing about work-life balance.
No, yeah, I like that a lot. And also, just in general too, like, I think, yeah, kind of like meeting other people in your career and figuring out how they maintain a work-life balance is really important, just to see how somebody else before you has done it. So anyone can answer this one, but I guess like how has like kind of networking really helped you to where you are in your career now? And how do mentors play a role in your career development?
I think I touched on it a little bit, well, earlier, just because networking was what got me that like job I currently have, between like my two, like graduating and my like I guess official, like the job that I had recruited for. Um, but I think networking, especially as like a Latina in STEM, where it's like if you think of like the layers of representation in STEM, there's obviously a there needs to be more representation of women in STEM, but then when you go into like women of color, then that's even like a lower population, right? So as like a woman of color in STEM, you I think having a network and having mentors is really, really important to me, because not only did I get resources and I got the opportunity to find like once like I guess like my castle came crumbling down and I was like, oh, this is not my plan's not going as expected. I had a lot of like people that had my back. I'm like, no, we're gonna find something for you. Like just we're gonna help you out. But it also helps you see that like you're not alone in this. It's like you're not even though like you might walk into a class and you might be like the only woman, or like you might be like the only Latino, you might be like the only one of yourself that you see, there are other people that have done this before, and there are other people that are successful at it. And I think that's really important. Just even subconsciously to see that like you're not alone in this, because it can, I think, during college and even like especially also with remote work when you're kind of just working, your only interaction with people is like a screen. It can be very easy to isolate yourself and be like, oh, I'm the only one that goes through this, or like I'm struggling, and like that's not the case. There's so many people that have done it before you, and like with mentors, not only do they help like validate that, give you tools to be like, if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling stuck, maybe try doing this, or like remind yourself of that. And I think that's really valuable, not only as a young professional, but even way before, like as a student in college or even in high school.
Yeah, no, so adding it to kind of what Valeria is saying, I think in the tech industry it's kind of not stated in my opinion. So being in CSBA, like in the business, you hear network, 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 network. It's very important. You like your social capital, your network is very important. They place a lot of emphasis on that for business students and then business curriculum. In CS, they don't really touch on that at all. It's like, here you go. This is how you do an if-else statement, and this is how we're gonna develop this app. So they don't really touch onto that. So I think that's definitely very important. So for me, I am a procrastinator at heart. Trying to work on that, but I am. So I started recruiting for my job, my postgrad job, so late into the process. Like just to give an idea, most students start trying to look for jobs like that summer they finish their junior internship. So like August, right on there, and then September. I started legit, no joke, January, February of the following year. Like that's how late I was into the game. And that's just because I prioritized school. It ended up working out, but maybe if I went back in time, I probably wouldn't have done that. But how I ended up getting my meta job was that my job wasn't even posted on the careers website actually. So how it ended up happening is, when I was doing recruiting, I was so desperate. I literally started cold emailing just recruiters, right? I would look on LinkedIn. I'll be like, who's a recruiter for this type of for this company? I'll be recruiter at company. And I would literally guess their email using like Mail Rocket or Rocket Mail or something, guess their email signatures. And I would use like a email verifier to see if it's an actual valid email address. So 50 out of 50 times, like I actually have a correct address, but I would send an email regardless. And I got met a job through I bombed my PayPal interview. But the recruiter kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, I know that you did seem like a very strong candidate for us. My friend is a recruiter at Meta, and I know she's looking for software engineers, specifically for the Austin location. Is that something you'd be interested in? And at this point I had no offer, so I was like, you know what? Yeah, like I'll take anything. So, and I ended up doing well throughout the process, because this wasn't my first rodeo, my first interview process. So I ended up doing well, and that's actually how I ended up doing the job. So I would not have known at all about this job if one, I, didn't make an effort to stay in contact with that PayPal recruiter, even though I bombed the PayPal interview, to even trying to reach out to that PayPal recruiter or cold emailing, you know? So in a sense, kind of where I'm at right now is really entirely based off of kind of the network that I was able to build, right? It wasn't something that I just found an online job posting, dropped my resume, and that was it. It wasn't like that. I got it through being, having gratefully being able to know the right people that put me in that position. So in that sense, I always think networking is very important. And also touching kind of on what I said, it's very hard being a woman, at least for me, it's very hard being a woman in tech because there's very little representation. I know we're doing a lot more with initiatives, in terms of, trying to increase that diversity within tech. But, because it's so male dominated, it will take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, right? So just to put things in perspective, I go in office and on a floor of engineers, I'm the only female, you know? So it's really like I don't see any other girls, you know, and it's very hard and disconcerting. And for me, it was hard for me in the beginning because, you know, obviously, I mean, I don't know if they actually think like this, but I would like to think they think like this. No one's judging me because I'm a girl that's a software engineer, right? No one's really actually maybe, but you know, no, no, thinking about it. But you shouldn't let that, you know, discourage you. You know, I think for me, what gave me the most comfort was, you know, things like this panel, and this is why I agreed to come on because I think this is something that's very important, right? Being able to know that, hey, you know, I don't see a lot of women in tech, but being able to know that, you know, someone that looks just like me can do what I want to do, and it's very much possible, right? That is very important, right? Because it's very hard to really have faith in kind of your dreams when you don't really see people, you know, that look like you or seem like you or have a similar personality kind of in that same position, right? So, and it's just that much harder if you're not only a woman, but like a woman of color, like kind of Valeria said. So that's why I think things like this initiative are very important. Even like caffeine. So any like those tech influencers or like the day in the life of a software engineer at 25 years old living in Chicago. Like I love those. I eat those up every day. And it just makes my day and it makes me feel better about being my job. Like, hey, you know, we have like a little silent army of women in tech kind of like doing their thing with being girl bosses every day. You know, it makes me feel better. But yeah.
I'm dead. No, yeah, that's great. And also, that's crazy, the story of like getting your job. I never knew that, but I guess like obviously you have a strength for reaching out to people. And I guess like how do you like, and obviously you're very talented in software too. So I guess how did you identify these strengths and how do these like unique strengths and like how do they help you in your job today? How do you
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like I'm a person that like I'm not really I am self-aware, okay? I am self-aware, but I have a really hard time owning kind of what my strengths are, right? For me, I've always been pretty critical of myself. I've always tried to push myself saying like I've reached point A, why can't I reach point B? Why couldn't I go like 1 inch, you know, further, right? And I think that's kind of where a great support system is really helpful. Like for me, just talking with my friends, doing projects with my friends, the people that were in my classes, you know, working with them, they help point out my strengths actually. They'll be like, wow, you're so good at this, or how are you able to do this? Or they'll be like, you know, oh, I realize that, you know, this is how you are, right? And hearing that, and you know, obviously there's a pattern, right? Because if it's your strength, you know, it's going to be known to people and they will kind of, you know, when they say something about it, it will be a pattern. You start to pick it up, right? So for me, I was able to realize, you know, very analytical, but and also not only am I like I'm like black and white and logical, but not only that, like I realized that I've always found this need to have like a creative outlet, you know, and I think that's what made me pursue software engineering because it's very logical in the sense of programming, coding, building, actually development, but it is a creative aspect to it in the sense of there is no one path to go about a project or a solution, right? It's very unique to the person that's building it. And that's something that I've always valued and why I like love what I do because I am able to have my own kind of like blueprint or identity on kind of every project that I built because I know the way that I would build something is not exactly how, for example, a senior engineer would build it, or let's say another engineer in like Fremont Park. They would not build it exactly the way I built it because it's unique to me and how my thought process works, right? So, yeah, that's that. But I think for like younger people in high school and college that are really trying to figure out what they want to do, whether or not path is really, you know, what they think it would be or it'll be good for them, always come down to kind of the, you know, the tried and true pros and cons list kind of. But I will, instead of pros and cons, I would say what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and kind of, and then from there I would say what I think fits with kind of what my strengths are, what really plays well to my strengths. And beyond that is really understanding kind of what is my passion or what are my interests, right? Because I feel like if you don't really love what you're doing, then it's very hard to go about doing corporate life because it's not easy. You know, it's hard, it's really grueling thinking I'm going to work a 9 to 5 for the next so many years, keep on doing the same thing in and out every day. And it just gets very tiring and it's very gruesome and grueling. But if you really love what you do, then it's not so bad, right? You see a lot of people say, I want to quit my 9 to 5. I'm never working again. I'm going to become an influencer because I can never bring myself to think about, the whole 9 to 5, right? Which is definitely valid. I have those thoughts too. But because I love what I do, I don't actually go about like, I'm going to quit everything. So I really think it's important that I wouldn't even think about the pay or the prestige that comes with the title. Really just go with kind of what you love doing, you know? Because at the end of the day, it's your life. You only have one life, YOLO, to really live it out. So just do it what you want to do, right? You don't have to listen to anyone else or what society tells you is a good job or anything. Like do what you want to do because you're very unique. There's only one of you. So, you can't expect yourself to fit into this cookie cutter every time. So that's kind of my take.
And on the take from a slightly different perspective.
So-
So I think they're like definitely parts of like, yes, you don't want to hate your job, but then also sometimes a job is just a job. Sometimes it's just a job. And like there are things that you can like about it, but without it being your whole self. And I think another part about like, so I'm first generation, first American citizen in my family. So what my 9 to 5 does is allow me to help my family and find fulfillment in other ways. Like if I had a choice, I would like to skip ahead to me being a high paying CEO, but I can't skip ahead. So my 9 to 5 is what allows me to continue that path. So sometimes a job can just get you on to the next, a job can be a job to get you to the next place. So like what I was saying before about finding a job and you finding it that you hating it and not being a failure, it got you to the next place. It got your, hopefully it helped you start a 401k, which I'm going to say, since nobody said it yet, please start contributing to your 401k. Compound interest is your best friend, please. And sometimes the job will get you there. Maybe you're interested in real estate investing. Getting a cute little software engineering job will get you there pretty fast versus being a real estate agent. So maybe that's the way that you do it. Your passion. Maybe you really care about community. You can community manager at a software a tech startup versus working at a nonprofit because they'll pay you 3 times as much for the same type of job. So like I think those are things that we should also like think about because some people are coming from very different socioeconomic circumstances. So like a 6-figure salary to some people is like, that's really nice. I can buy more stuff. But it's like 6 figures to other people is I can change my family's trajectory. So sometimes
Wow, yeah, I really like that too, because it's like, especially if, yeah, you come from somewhere that you don't know that you would like the job that pays 6 figures and you might love it, kind of what Catherine was saying. Yeah, like that's a great way for people to get motivated to get into that. And then they find out, oh, I love it. Oh, that's great. I guess so how do you guys currently stay updated on industry trends and advancements? That's kind of totally different, but how do you currently?
I have to like I was brutally forced on my brain every day. So my nature of my job, I work like almost like a tech influencer kind of. So every time I log into Twitter, I'm brutally thrown into tech Twitter and all of the drama. But I think a good way is to go to conferences and be a part of your local meetups. So I just moved to New York. I work in the cloud computing space. So I started working in the tech meetups for my space. So kind of like Catherine was saying about tech stacks. So once you start working, you'll probably be using similar technologies. So lots of these technologies have different tools and they'll have different meetup groups. So that's a good way to stay abreast on all the information for your industry, and it helps you with your networking. So it's kind of like 2 for 1 in one event, which is great. And they're virtual too. So if you live in a place that's not as densely packed, they have virtual events as well.
We'll definitely have to link that. I'll have to like put that in the notes, links to those. That's I would totally go to those. I know you've invited me a couple. I need to go more, but and I guess if anyone else has any say on that, or I guess or
I mean,
another question.
yeah, I mean, just adding to that, I think, those conferences, conventions is very helpful. I'm very lucky in the sense that my company does happen to be at the front of technology. So they do have a lot of these conferences and conventions that they stream that I, watch, and I'm able to pick up on kind of what trends are happening, right? What's going on, right? Obviously, right now, that happens to be Gen AI, right? With ChatGPT and everything. So, I picked that up. And I even went to my manager. I was like, hey, is there any way I can incorporate Gen AI into any of our products? Just so because the way I am is like I learn by physically doing it. Like I can't like obviously I can pick some things up by reading it, but like actually like coding, actually building something out, that's how I learned the best. And because I was able to do that and talk to my manager about it, I do have a project that I can work on for that. And just so happens to align with kind of what the company wants to do. But, kind of just adding to what Maria said, those conventions and those conferences very helpful. And even one side of work, because it just helps you get a better understanding of what the tech landscape looks like right now, and kind of what you might be interested in, how you might want to get involved with that. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. I guess another kind of like switch of unexpected opportunities or challenges that arose post graduation. Immediately Valeria comes to mind because of the delayed offer, which is something a lot of people are experiencing, and you don't really hear a lot about it too. So I think that would be great to touch on.
Yeah, of course. I do think that like you said, the fact that it hasn't been talked about as much yet. So many people that I know that graduated like the same class of me, like had the same situation. It's important to know just because at least for me, it made me feel less alone when I was going through it. And I think I like to joke around that it was my accidental gap year because um it basically was. But more than that, I think when I was in a situation where like I just had to kind of really figure out what I was gonna do, um, I wanted to continue, like I said before, I wanted to continue growing professionally, but I wanted to give myself the space to do something that I would never have thought of doing, right? So I think where I work at the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. It's a nonprofit, and it's something that I'm really, really passionate about just because it helped me through my journey as a college student. Like it gave me resources, it gave me a network, it gave me friends. So I was really passionate about the work that they did. Um, but also on a more personal sense, like I'm a very impact oriented person, right? So I anything that I do, I want to do it because I know that it will like change someone's life, where it's like whether it's like they will influence them to go into STEM, which is the work that I would do in SHIP, or when I work at Accenture, like a lot of the projects that my department works on are very let's see how I can put this. They're very um production manufacturing oriented, but it so to not get too technical, um, a lot of eccentric projects outside of my department are very like not software based, but they're not directly impacting people. Where you doing work that's like business to business. That's the word that was. They're business to business where my projects have a little more direct consumer impact to them, where it's like that's that's also a form of impact that I care about. Um, and I think being in this position where I was like kind of just trying to find something that I would be happy doing for um a year helped me realize like what are the traits that I'm looking for and what are like what do I want, what would make me happy when I am maybe like a couple down years down the road. And I was like, what could I say show for? Like for me, that's impact. Like what impact did I have? Like what and how can I be in positions where I can help other people? And I think I wouldn't have gotten to that self-realization if it wasn't for the situation that I was in, right? So all of that is to say that whenever things don't go as expected, which is bound to happen because that's just how life works, it's an opportunity to, rather than get stuck, to take that, learn from it, and really be introspective with like what can I get out of this? Like what is this teaching me about life and what is this teaching me about myself, so that next time around that I have a difficult situation, I can overcome it and I can move past it. And I think that mindset, that shift in mindset was what was really important for me to be able to overcome the situation I had.